This is the Horse Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wood.
And I'm Jennifer Connor.
From Equestrian Businesswomen, and you're listening to Equestrian B2B, the podcast that brings together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and equestrians for conversations about how they build and sustain a successful business.
On today's show, we talk to Heather Bragg about starting a new business that has nothing to do with horses, but how she plans to bring it into the equestrian industry.
Heather Bragg has over 2 decades of experience working with students, parents, educators, therapists, and caregivers. After several years of teaching in the Chicago public school system, Heather earned her master's degree in communication sciences and disorders from Northwestern University. Upon completing her graduate degree, Heather taught at the University of Chicago's Hyde Park Day School and Northwestern University's Center for Talent Development. Heather currently serves as the multisensory math specialist at Elgin Academy, where she teaches both neurotypical students and children with identified learning differences. Heather has presented at conferences at the regional and national level, including at the 2019 Learning Disabilities of America Annual Conference. Her work has been featured on CBS, WGN, and in Crain's Chicago Business. She was also a contributor to the Huffington Post, where she wrote about teaching and parenting children with learning and attention differences.
In addition to her work in education, Heather is a longtime horse person. She spent several years showing hunters as a junior, playing polo as a college student, and is now an active member of the Wayne DuPage Hunt in Northern Illinois, partnered with her polo pony turned field hunter, Goose.
Stomach ulcers make you feel bad. All natural ulcer relief makes you feel good. With no known side effects and a 100% money-back guarantee, why not give it a try? ulcerrelief.com.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great. We're really excited to have you on the podcast today. We've done, this is our 30th episode now, and we have had lots of friends and colleagues on, and, usually like sometimes it's friends that Jen and I knew in college, and, we'll be like, we've known you for decades, blah, blah, blah. But I can officially say now that this guest is a person that I have known the longest in my life.
I'm the oldest.
Yeah. No, you're not you're the oldest friend. Yeah. Not in age, but in duration of friendship.
I wasn't going to qualify it, but yes.
Because I think we started riding at the same barn when I was 10.
I know it was 1990. Yes, you probably were.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day because I was talking to somebody about ponies, and I always think of your pony. And I know you had I came to the barn right after your last short stirrup season. So you're moving on to pony hunters from short stirrup.
Yep. So I was like 10, 11 years old. So it's quite a haul that we've done and kept in touch the whole time. So we're really excited to hear more about your latest venture and kind of how, it applies. We have an audience of equestrian businesswomen, obviously, but horse people overall. And I think it'll be cool to talk about both and with you.
Yeah. The business has definitely changed, as far as I would think you guys know way more than me, but just I think when we were kids, you were either a trainer, maybe a rider, and that's, I don't know, pretty much it. I'm sure there were some other, you could be a barn manager or whatever, but it wasn't probably the industry that it is now.
Right, for sure. So. We've talked about that too, of how young people need to realize there's way more paths to a career in the equestrian industry rather than just riding and training. For those who don't want that 24/7 lifestyle, but still, love the horses a lot. And we've talked to lots of professionals that have, had to drop horses and riding out of their life for a while and gone back to it, which you can relate to as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because I've listened to your podcast, and I was just listening to Maria's most recently, and
Mhm.
she is what my husband would call an onion. She has layers, right? She's done so many different things and kind of cross-pollinated different things. And yeah, I remember listening to her talk about, really stepping away from horses for a while to pursue acting. And it's
Mm.
interesting that we can live so many lives in one life, and just
Yeah.
because something gets pushed to the side or to the back burner doesn't mean it will be there forever. So thank goodness.
Yeah, definitely. So going into that, talking about you launching a new business, we'd love to kind of hear about it and, what prompted you, what was the inspiration behind building your new business?
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, the origin story and kind of how it's morphed. So if I really go back to the roots, I started out as a teacher, and I had students who struggled mostly with early reading. I was teaching first grade, and I didn't feel like I was doing a good job helping them. And I don't like sucking at things. So I went back, went to grad school, went to a program that was very good and focused kind of on more like clinical psychology and things like that, and learned some great tools to work with children with learning disabilities. But most of those tools are, really applicable to everyone. They're just things that I learned in that program that, can be used with everyone. I've learned a lot of things to help myself be a better learner. And so really specialize in working with kids with mild to moderate learning disabilities. Dyslexia is kind of a common one that people hear a lot about. I've worked with a lot of kids with ADHD. So what we're calling in the field, we call it neuroatypical, right? So kids that are perfectly bright, perfectly capable, they're most likely going to go on to college and do great things, but they're a little different and they learn a little differently, and they might need some flexibility around some things. And I, through that, was doing a lot of tutoring as well after school. And then it really started with a ballerina. I was working with a girl who was in high school, but taking online. She was homeschooled officially, but really taking all of her classes online because she was at the Joffrey Ballet in Chicago. And she had some health challenges and was just having a hard time keeping up with everything. And so I was brought in more really to support kind of the organization and to advocate for her and to communicate with her teachers, because she was taking classes through like community colleges and, a class at one school and a class at a different school. So I was kind of the hub, the main organizer, kept the calendar for her. And she's a very high achiever, but it was just with her health concern, it was a lot. And so I was kind of the hub of the wheel for her and the communication person, and also her advocate, reaching out to some of these professors and saying, like, so here's the situation, she, is limited at this time because she's in some PT and some therapy for so many hours a day. Can we narrow this down to one key assignment? And really doing a lot of work with her beyond just the academics. And then that's kind of translated into working with some kids that travel for various sports, but, a lot of horse show kids.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how it's just morphed over time. And I think because of COVID, we're all so much more savvy around online education. And there are plenty of kids, homeschooling 10, 15, 20 years ago is something very different than it is now.
Right.
And, most of the kids I know that are really serious about riding are doing some type of homeschool or online school. But that doesn't mean they can plug right in and they're on autopilot. They often still need someone to kind of help bridge some things. And so that's where I come in.
Cool. And so what are some of the steps you took to thinking, oh, I could do this for kids in the equestrian industry into an actual business?
At the moment, it's kind of a side business. I do teach during the day. I teach at a school called Elgin Academy. We have quite a few equestrian kids here. It is a private school, and we have quite a few kids that spend most of the winter in Florida. We're a small school, and the teachers are very flexible and have, really talked to kids about, we'll be flexible, but, if I email you, I do need you to respond within 24 hours. We'll work with you, but we do ask for a certain level of responsibility and responsiveness. And so it was kind of through Elgin Academy. And, some of these kids I know from the barn or from the local horse world. And it just is kind of solidified over time. So it's not a full-time, 9 to 5. And it's probably better that way because when I am needed, it's kind of not typical hours, if that makes sense. Kids are kind of coming back at the end of the day or after showing during the day and trying to catch up on schoolwork. And sometimes we have some early morning sessions. So it's just kind of a as needed. But we'll see where it goes, because it's definitely grown over the last year. So
yeah. And has it been different kind of balancing that kind of side gig with your main 9 to 5? I know there's lots of people, entrepreneurs, especially, who we've talked to a bunch of people who started their own business while they were working a full-time job. So what's it been like trying to balance that?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it so depends. Everything has its kind of phases, right? A couple weeks ago, at the start of the school year, my school job was, occupying like 95% of my bandwidth. And other times, you kind of plug into the rhythm of things with your 9 to 5, and things kind of get in a good hum, and you do have available, for me, it's kind of more available brain space than actual hours in the day.
Right.
My day ends at 2:45. I'm free afterwards. I'm flexible and on weekends. But again, it's that kind of that focus kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I wish I had some wise words or a great overall system for handling it, but I think it's kind of taking it day by day and week by week. And I'm a big believer in looking like a day or two ahead on my schedule. And there are days where I'm like, okay, tomorrow's going to be a doozy. I got to set my alarm for 5 a.m. to like get up and knock out a few things so that I can be on top of things. But yeah, it's, plugging in, filling in. I do have some good white space in my schedule at school, some prep times I can kind of get some things done. And then, just managing time on weekends. I've tried to cut down driving as much as I can. And luckily we live in a world now where we can do that. There's a lot of, meetings and things that happen via Zoom. So I don't have to drive into Chicago or here, there, and everywhere. So that saves time too. But yeah, kind of just taking it day by day, I think.
Yeah. I love that point of, you may have time on the clock, but you may not have, time and space in your calendar, but not time and space in your brain for something.
Yeah.
I've felt that way a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as of like 3 or 4 p.m., I'm kind of going downhill. So if I need to do any mental heavy lifting, like that's not the time, so if I'm really needing to sit down and look at a student's or client's kind of workload and what's due when, and really do the logistical problem solving, I got to do that in the morning, because if I do it in the afternoon, I'm not going to do nearly as good of a job.
Yeah. Recognizing that in yourself is really important.
There's a great book by Daniel Pink called When, and it's part of it is about like your own brain rhythms and your own timing and how to optimize that.
Cool. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like something that I would.
Jen's going to add it to her book list.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I just wrote it down.
I love all his stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking about that with the brain space, but also that you kind of psych yourself up knowing what your day looks like. I think that's so important, because I think sometimes we don't, right? And look, it's only going to suck for a day, right? And or like for me, if I know that I've got like a lot of traveling coming up and I've got a lot of being a salesperson, and I'm like, okay, I just need to get through till this date and then I can do it. Right. But if I don't kind of like set myself up for it, then I'm going to fail, because I'm not prepared. Right. And then I get into the middle of it and I'm overwhelmed. But, I think that it's important to kind of set those goals to know, okay, I got to get up early. I'm going to get this done and, move on.
Yeah. And then the relief day or the quiet day, if it's on the horizon, kind of dangling that carrot.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I actually want to go back to something you said right away, was that you don't really like to suck at anything, which I think is kind of like most of us and most people, but especially like equestrians, right? We really, really hate to suck at things.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was reading something earlier and it said, like do something, be brave enough to do something new that you suck at. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if I feel like
that's really
I say
hard
thumbs down. Yeah.
Where I'm like, nah, I think I'll pass. Right.
Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
New hobbies? No thanks. Golf?
Yeah.
No, not picking that up.
I'll cruise it when I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you took a little bit of a break from teaching, and we were just wondering what was the reason that you came back, and why you did that.
Yeah, so I think it's funny because I've been reflecting on that quite a bit now that I'm back full time. This is my first full year being back full time in a few years. So I stepped away from teaching in 2018 for several reasons. One of which was I was teaching before that at Chicago Public Schools. And I have some more stories someday over beers. I have things that are shocking and honestly really upsetting and sad. So that definitely burns me out. I am the parent of two boys who are what we call twice exceptional. So both my stepson, who's 21, he's a senior in college, hallelujah, on a good trajectory. And then my son, Aaron, who's 11, also on a good trajectory. He's a sixth grader. They both have high IQs and ADHD. And they're wonderful kids and they're fantastic, but they're a lot. It's been a lot of maintenance, a lot of work to keep them on a good path, because they just have very busy brains and they're sensitive. And so I was working with kids that are challenging all day, and I was coming home to my own challenging kids after school. And, I think there's only so much nurturing. I felt like I was using up my patience with other people's kids, and I didn't have much patience with my own. So between my years in Chicago Public Schools and just wanting to be a good parent to my own boys, I stepped away. I still did some tutoring and some consulting, so I kind of kept one foot in the education world because it is my passion. Especially we're learning and doing so much more now with neuroatypical kids, and the world is becoming so much more aware that it's not just that they're not smart or that they're, they can go into these careers. I think we're seeing all the shades of gray in abilities now. But yeah, I stepped away from it as a full-time job for many years. And it's funny because there's such a teacher shortage right now. And I think COVID burned a lot of people out. But COVID was when I had stepped away. So I kind of recharged during that time. So I kind of come back in like, all right, this is great. Let me back at it. And I'm really grateful for that because I feel like I have a level of energy and enthusiasm, kind of having taken a little respite that if I had kept going, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My mother-in-law was a teacher, and actually she was a teacher and then she raised her kids. And then she went back to teaching when my sister-in-law was a senior in high school, and she taught, and she was of retirement age. She didn't really want to retire, but COVID really did burn her out. Like the online stuff was a struggle for her, learning that at her age and just, having to do it. And it's a different teaching style than all the years that she taught.
And you had to scramble and put it together.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so she ended up retiring because she was like, I just can't. And I think she misses it. Like, I think she'd love to still be involved. And I know they talked about maybe she was going to go back and do some substitute teaching, but being back in the class, I don't know that everybody's comfortable with her age being back in with the kids with COVID still out there. So, they've kind of put that on hold, but I know she definitely misses it, that interaction every day, that has something to do.
Yeah. When the conditions are good, it's such a fantastic job. It really is. But it's hard to get those right conditions. And, I really like being at the school where I am too, and it's small and it's private. And so there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more autonomy. The conditions are right. The conditions are what they really should be. But unfortunately, and I'm a product of public schools. I know, Jen Wood is as well. So I'm not knocking public schools, but it's a different burden to be a teacher in a public school setting. There's just a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of limitations and challenges that you don't have in kind of a more independent setting where I am right now. So I'm very grateful to be here.
I've kind of a random question just because, we've talked about your experience dealing with kids with ADHD, and I've seen a lot online lately about kind of millennial age women. So maybe, 5 to 10 years younger than us, not knowing they had or have ADHD and being diagnosed as an adult, and how much it has changed their, it completely gave them the light bulb of, oh my gosh, this is why
Makes sense.
everything makes sense now that I know this, and like finally getting diagnosed and getting medicine and learning how to cope with, the challenges that brings. And I just thought that was really interesting, because I just wonder how many people just think they can't do something, but it's because their brain isn't letting them.
Yeah. And it's interesting because girls, we talk about this in the field, that girls often go undiagnosed because they're not disruptive. They're not the ones that are like throwing the paper airplanes or the spitballs, they're like staring out the window and daydreaming. And I think a lot of adults are getting diagnosed now because their kids are. And then as they go through that process, they're like, you know what? That kind of rings a bell. That kind of hits home for me. I have a friend that actually, an old neighbor who's a physical therapist, and her daughter, who is a couple of years older than my son. So she's probably in 8th grade. The daughter was just diagnosed. Mom, going through that process, was like, you know what? I kind of wonder if this describes me too. And was diagnosed at, I don't know, 48. 47 years old. And she's like, oh my goodness, it was a relief for her. She thought, oh, I always thought I just wasn't trying hard enough, or this and that and the other thing. Our generation, like, there wasn't as much awareness when we were kids. And, we're girls, we're like, trying to follow the rules and please everybody. And so, we fly under the radar with our inattention a lot.
How do you see the challenges of kind of bringing your business into the equestrian industry, and something that has nothing to do with horses into this industry?
Yeah, well, that is kind of the challenge. I think there are a lot of families out there who are looking for kind of education platforms and some education materials for their kid, but it's important to them, but there's so many other things on their minds, maybe more specific to actually being in the show ring. And I think one of the challenges is that not all education platforms and products and people, they're not all the same. And they're not all as good of a fit for every student, right? So I think we're living in this world with this amazing array of choices as far as education for our kids, a lot of which are online. But I see this honestly with the tutoring business, kind of just local, Huntington and some of the other tutoring centers in the area. They do a great service, and they're not specialized, so that a child going to a kind of a chain tutoring company, you have two different kids with kind of two different brain profiles, they're not going to get the same benefit, right? So just because you plug your kid, you give them headphones and you sit them down on this platform, it's not automatically on a roll, and different kids kind of need different things. And so I guess kind of making that differentiation that, like, oh, great, so you did find an online math program for your child that is, technically homeschooled because they're competing, they're on the show circuit, but that doesn't mean that's the best option for them, and that doesn't mean it's the best fit. So I think kind of, again, seeing the shades of gray and being one of those, and I think we all have our guard up sometimes for when we're like, oh, really, your product is tailor made for me. So I think it's just kind of like, well, here's what's different, and here's how you know if your child needs something a little bit different. So cool. Differentiation, which I guess, is probably for a product or service, maybe a universal struggle for all entrepreneurs. Right. What makes your offering different?
Yeah. Why is it better than the others?
Yeah.
How do you plan to grow it?
At the moment, I don't really have necessarily like a particular business plan. It's been organic, and I'm going to kind of continue to let that happen and kind of see where it goes. And I think we're also just kind of getting back out there in person in the world. So I can't wait for the next Equestrian Businesswomen Summit. So getting back to the face-to-face and talking to people via Zoom and via phone calls is, is fine, and it's great. And we've kind of had to make do with it the past few years. But conferences are starting back up again, and in-person gatherings are starting back up again. So I think word of mouth and organically, and that's really the best probably way to grow any business, right? I know I also have a real estate license, and we talk about if you're just going to send postcards or mailers or flyer, put your name on a bus bench or whatever, people have to see your name, I think it's 7 times for it to really stick in their mind. But if it's a friend who says, oh, you need a math tutor, I use this person, it just takes once.
Right.
You know, so the organic word of mouth is really kind of the best way. So I wish I could tell you I had some multi-pronged marketing approach, planned out. But it's really just been organic. And that's been wonderful too, because there are better personal connections and better relationships. And honestly, I think better work comes out of it when it's a family that, it's 1 degree of separation from me or from someone I know.
Yeah.
And are you a one-woman show right now then?
I am. Yep.
Do you anticipate growing it to have more people, or are you going to try and keep it just within your realm?
I plan to keep it just within me. I've definitely had families that have reached out, and there are other platforms or other products or other people that I think are a better fit. So I think because I've kind of got this niche specifically with kids who are neuroatypical, it would be hard. There are definitely people that kind of do what I do as far as teaching in the classroom and have training as a learning disability specialist, but kind of managing and being the hub for the online programs and be the liaison between the student and their school when they're traveling. There's a lot of components to it. I'm sure there are plenty of other people that could do it. I haven't really met any like-minded, fellow teacher, tutor, learning specialists yet. So I'm certainly open to it, which does limit the scale, but I also don't want to necessarily create my own platform or anything like that, because I think then you lose the individuation and the kind of tailor-made education, which is kind of the point of the whole thing.
Right. And you mentioned before that you're a realtor as well. How has getting out of your regular profession of teaching helped you in your career?
Oh gosh, it helped me immensely, and I still have my real estate license, and I still do some work kind of at a lull in the housing market right now. We're in I think a 17-year low housing inventory, but definitely still work with friends, family, and referrals from past clients. So have my foot in that as well. I love it. It's problem solving, and it's customer service and going above and beyond. I really have learned so much in that industry, a lot of diplomacy and negotiation. But it's been interesting because when I stepped out of education, especially being a special